Straight to questions. First off, Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. Does Revenue Group have any visibility or knowledge of the $2.3 billion of unlawful payments by Treasury?
That's a question that's probably more directed to Fiscal Group.
I will be asking them too, but I just want to know whether Revenue Group were you consulted on the issue and involvement in mitigating or managing the issue?
There's been discussions at the board level, but probably more around executive board members rather than a Revenue Group issue.
Okay, all right, good. I will discuss that with them. I want to discuss the government's changes to superannuation taxation. Has Treasury done an assessment on the reduced revenue that will be collected as a result of the changes?
Yes, we have. The Treasurer included costings in his announcement on the 13th of October, and they were produced by Treasury.
What is the reduced revenue?
Sorry, no, I haven't got the top of my head, sorry, but I might get Mr McKenna to maybe answer that question.
Ms Brown, could you just speak up a little bit? Everyone, it's hard to hear with the microphone.
Certainly, I'll try.
You go.
Shane Johnson, First Assistant Secretary, Tax Analysis Division. So the numbers are contained in the Treasurer's press release, but excluding the listo change, the amended superannuation policy is expected to generate revenue of over $2 billion over its first year of operation. That's in 28-29. That's a little bit less than what was in the original formulation. I think the Treasurer indicated in the press release after that in 28-29 the new package would be around $2 billion in revenue collected. The previous one was just over 2.5, if that helps.
I've got. Do you have anything over the forwards or medium term?
Over the medium term, so the package is expected to raise about $2 billion over the forward estimates compared to the previous gain of $6.2 billion. That was under the original policy. I think that was also in the media release. The main difference there, the main thing that's affecting that is the 1 year delay in the commencement.
And Senator, the details of the costing will be published fully in the MAEFO when it's released as a measure.
Yeah, I've got information here which I'm happy to be corrected on if it's wrong, that the PBO has estimated that the difference in the revenue is much greater than that, that it's to the tune of $15.5 billion, that the original policy would have collected $40.8 billion and that the revised policy will collect $25.3 billion. Are you familiar with those numbers?
Senator, that was in an article in the Financial Review today. We haven't seen the PBO report, so I don't think there's...
They're not numbers I'm aware of.
So Treasury hasn't run numbers over a longer period of time.
So is that over a 10 year? Is that what you're talking about? I haven't seen the PBO report, so it's hard to answer questions on it.
Sure, yep, but I'm just interested in whether it accords at all with any of the numbers that Treasury has considered.
Well, the numbers will be updated in the normal way, as you would expect through MyEFO, and you've had the evidence already this morning from Treasury officials about what the expected change in that would look like.
So I think I heard you say, earlier, Dr. Johnson, that the main revenue difference between the two versions of the tax is simply from the delayed start date of $2 billion. Is that right?
That's of those numbers over the forward estimates, yes.
Yeah. Has Treasury made any assumptions about behavioural change?
So anytime we do costings, we do look into potential behavioural changes, yes.
And what behavioural change do you anticipate people will make as a result of this?
So people can make a range of different behavioural changes to policies. On the original policy, one expectation was that people would, potentially take money out of superannuation and put it into assets outside of superannuation, for example. And so, with this change in policy, we would expect, for example, a reversal of that kind of change.
You don't think people will be taking money out of superannuation as a result of this, or fewer people will be?
We would expect that the impact would be less, yes.
Because the thresholds are different?
No, because of the change in the policy design.
From the unrealised taxation to only taxing realised gains?
Yes.
One of the other behavioural aspects, which I think is alluded to in the AFR article this morning that Ms Brown referenced, is that people may not sell assets within superannuation so that the gain is never realised. Is that a behavioural effect that you've modelled?
Look, so, I mean, those kind of things that, so I think in the article itself talks about potential things around housing. They're typically a very small proportion or a small proportion of assets in superannuation funds. In fact, the majority of funds actually have quite a diversified portfolio, and many factors will influence people when they will realise. I think in terms of the potential revenue still arises through the taxation of interest, dividends, and rents and other things in the system as well.
But correct me if I'm wrong. If I've got a self-managed super fund and I don't want to pay tax, then one of the ways that I can legally limit paying the tax is just by not selling assets within my fund.
So that would be the case on the current system.
Yeah, but it's one of the differences between the first version of this tax and the new version, isn't that not right?
It's a difference.
In both versions, it would depend on a disposal.
Exactly. But now, potentially, depending on how much assets I have in my superannuation, I'm facing a tax of up to 40%, which I didn't face before. That's a pretty powerful incentive to not sell an asset, isn't it?
So you're paying tax on the proportion of the gain that's above the thing, so it's not an additional 40% tax.
Yes, but I've never before been charged 40% in my SMSF, have I?
No, but
that's a new tax which is being introduced as a result of this change.
Is a new tax, but it's not a 40% additional tax.
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of dancing around it. Was there ever a headline 40% tax before in super?
There's not. Well, there's at the moment the additional tax isn't an additional 40% tax. That's all. Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, I feel like I'm talking at cross purposes here. Prior to the announcement of these changes, there was no taxation rate of 40% in superannuation, was there?
No.
And these changes will introduce for the first time 40% rate of tax, as you say, on above
only on gains that are above the threshold.
Sure, I'm not suggesting otherwise.
Which means that the effective rate of tax would be lower than the 40%.
Sure, but that's the headline rate, right?
That's the headline rate.
It's a headline rate applying to a very small proportion of people. The highest
but
rate would only apply
still
to a very small
concessional.
position.
Just not as concessional, Senator Patterson.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing that point, Minister. What I'm arguing is that people who face that headline rate, it's going to influence their behaviour, isn't it? Most people don't want to pay a 40% rate on their superannuation if they can legitimately avoid doing so, and one way they can legitimately avoid doing so is by not selling assets. Is that not right?
The tax will be payable on realisation.
Correct.
But if the asset earns income, rent, dividends, whatever,
sure,
that would also be taxed during the holding of the
Indeed.
life,
So I'm just trying to understand to what extent has that behavioural response been factored into Treasury's costings?
So the costings considered the range of assets in the portfolio as part of coming up with the costing. And as Dr Johnson said, we did look at some behavioural assumptions. We would look at the more material behavioural assumptions, behaviours. Here, as Dr Johnson said, housing is a very small proportion of, if you're talking about housing, of the portfolio. Even real property is not a particularly significant part of the holdings. As Dr Johnson said, it is a diversified portfolio that most super funds hold. And then there's a range of reasons, not just tax, for why people will decide to dispose of
Sure.
it.
Another reason why there might be a discrepancy between the first version of this tax arrangement and the latest version is that the first version contained no indexation of thresholds and this one does. What magnitude of the difference in revenue collected can be attributed to the change on indexation?
I think we'd have to take that on notice. We provide costing at an aggregate level. Of course, we consider all of the changes, but I'm not sure if we have at hand the breakdown between the impact of a year, the indexation, the change in tax rates and exclusion of judges, for example.
Well, we were able to understand earlier from Dr Johnson that about $2 billion was attributed to the delay. So why can't, if we can break that down, why can't we break down other components?
We can break it down, and the Treasurer referenced the impact of the year. We just probably haven't got it at hand. And so
Dr Johnson, you don't have it available?
Let's take it on notice, I think.
And I also didn't mention the size. I just mentioned that the largest proportion. We know that as we know how much was in the original costing versus the new one. So.
Thank you, but over time it will be a greater amount, won't it? Because of the lack of the indexation in this compared to the lack of indexation in the first policy. The revenue difference over time will be greater due to that factor.
That's true. The indexation will mean that the measure only applies to a smaller group.
And therefore there'll be much less revenue collected.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Less
the balance-
Less revenue.
less revenue.
Not much less?
Less.
Well, how about the officials have taken it on notice, Senator Patterson. I don't think, so you'll get your answer. I don't know that it's useful to put words into people's mouths.
Well, I'm giving them an opportunity to contradict me if they disagree, but I can't put words in anyone's
they've
mouth.
said less.
Yeah, and that's why I'm
And then you
seeking
said
to
much
understand that.
less,
Yeah.
and I'm saying they've taken it on notice so they can give you an accurate answer, which I think is reasonable.
Okay, thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Go back to Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. So, just to be clear, we don't have a medium-term or long-term estimate of the difference between the revenue collected between those two different versions of the tax.
Medium-term numbers are not normally disclosed by government.
Why not?
It's the Charter of Budget Honesty indicates what costing information needs to be disclosed, and that relates to the disclosure of costs over the forward estimates only.
Okay. Obviously, though, it's going to collect less revenue. What provision has the government made for making up for the difference in the revenue collected?
Well, I just answered this from Senator McKim. So it'll be updated in my EFO, and it'll be one of many transactions on and off that you'll see through my EFO.
So, can you tell me, Minister, if it'll be offset in my EFO?
Well, you'll have to wait for my EFO
When will that be?
before Christmas.
I think it's a legitimate public interest because the government took this policy to the election. It underpinned your election costings, and you made certain claims about the state of the budget based on revenue that you're now not going to collect. So I think having revised the policy, I think it's incumbent on the government to explain where you're going to make up for that lost revenue if you do indeed plan to.
Well, it'll be updated in the normal way as required, which is that, at the first update following a change or a decision made by government, it'd be updated, and that's what will happen.
Right.
Are you guys supporting this one? This version of it?
Well, let's see. Are you going to stick with it like the previous one?
It's a decision of government, and we will be introducing legislation to that effect.
Okay.